Never judge a man by his clothes, the price of a manager's mistake. The luxury car showroom was a shrine to wealth, every inch designed to impress. Polished white marble stretched across the vast floor, gleaming under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Towering glass walls framed an elite collection of high-performance sports cars, each machine a masterpiece, waiting for the next deep-pocketed buyer to arrive and indulge in extravagance. And then he walked in. Jack Dawson pushed open the heavy glass doors, stepping inside with an air of quiet certainty. At first, no one paid him any mind. But the moment his boots touched that pristine floor, leaving behind faint traces of dust and dried mud, the atmosphere in the room shifted. His flannel shirt, damp with sweat from a long day's labor, clung to his back. His jeans, worn and faded, carried the weight of years of honest work. To the showroom staff, he was an outsider, someone who clearly didn't belong in this world of polished perfection. And that was their first mistake. The scent of leather and expensive cologne filled the air, thick with the essence of wealth. But Jack Dawson carried something different, the faint smell of fresh soil and open country air. It was as if the outside world had no place here. A few salesmen stole quick glances at him before resuming their conversations. A well-dressed couple admiring an electric blue sports car turned their heads, their eyes scanning him up and down before exchanging whispers. And then there was Ryan Calloway. The showroom manager had been leaning against the front desk, chuckling at something on his phone. But the second Jack stepped in, his expression shifted. His jaw tightened, his lips pressed into a thin line. His eyes swept over Jack like he was some intruder who had wandered into the wrong part of town. Jack had barely taken a few steps before Ryan moved in, cutting him off. "Sir," Ryan said, his voice coated in forced politeness, "can I help you with something?" Jack, unfazed, let his gaze wander around the showroom. "Yeah, I was hoping to take a look at the new limited edition model. Heard you had one in stock." Ryan let out a short, almost amused breath. His eyes flicked over Jack's dirt-streaked boots, the rough hands, the worn-out cap sitting low on his forehead. "We don't exactly do test drives for just anyone," Ryan said, tilting his head slightly. "This isn't the kind of place where you just browse." Jack raised an eyebrow. "That's so?" Ryan folded his arms, his smirk widening. "Maybe you'd have better luck at one of the dealerships across town. They've got a solid selection of used trucks." But before Jack could respond, the showroom doors swung open with a quiet hiss. A rush of cool air followed, but Ryan didn't bother turning around. His focus remained locked on Jack, as if making sure he didn't take another step deeper into his showroom. Jack exhaled slowly, feeling his patience stretch thin. He had spent years dealing with men like Ryan, different faces, same attitude. He had half a mind to turn around and walk right out, but something inside him told him to stay. "I'm not looking for a used truck," Jack said, his voice calm but firm. "I came here for a reason." Ryan chuckled under his breath, shaking his head like he'd heard this story 100 times before. "Sir, this is a luxury dealership. Our clientele is selective." He let the last word hang in the air, deliberate and sharp. A few feet away, a younger salesman, mid-20s, sharp suit, nervous energy shifted uncomfortably. He glanced between Jack and Ryan, his posture stiff, as if debating whether to step in. But he didn't. Jack adjusted his cap, meeting Ryan's gaze without flinching. "Selective, huh?" Ryan's smirk didn't fade. "That's right." The tension in the showroom thickened, stretching between them like an invisible rope pulled tight. A woman browsing a sleek silver sports car with her husband shot a quick glance at them, then turned away, pretending not to notice. Jack sighed, slipping his calloused hands into his pockets. "You know," he said, shaking his head slightly, "I've worked hard my whole life. Built something from the ground up. And the funny thing about money, it doesn't always dress the way you expect it to." Ryan's expression barely flickered. If anything, he looked more amused. "I'm sure that's true," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "But our customers don't usually track dirt into the showroom. His eyes flicked down to Jack's boots, dusty, worn, and well used, before flicking back up, his smirk widening. So unless you're here for something realistic, he gestured lazily toward the exit. I don't want to waste your time. The younger salesman shifted again. This time, he opened his mouth, but Ryan shot him a look that shut him down before he could speak. Jack let out a short laugh, low and knowing. He had expected this. It wasn't the first time, and it sure as hell wouldn't be the last. But before Jack could respond, a voice sliced through the tension like a knife. Hey, Dad. Sorry I took so long. Ryan Calloway's expression froze mid-smirk. Slowly, he turned toward the voice. The man who had just walked in was the embodiment of success. Tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, a sleek designer watch that caught the light at just the right angle. He carried himself with the kind of effortless confidence that made people step aside without him even asking. Lucas, Jack gave a small nod, his face unreadable. You're late, Lucas chuckled as he walked toward his father. Yeah, got caught up with some last-minute calls. He clapped Jack on the shoulder, completely at ease, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then his sharp gaze flicked toward Ryan. And in that instant, everything changed. The air in the room shifted. The tension that had been simmering between Jack and Ryan was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous: panic. Ryan blinked rapidly, his mouth slightly open as his brain scrambled to process what was happening. His eyes darted between Jack and Lucas, searching desperately for a mistake, a misunderstanding. Jack, the man he had just brushed off as some broke farmer who had wandered in by accident. He was Lucas's father. Lucas frowned slightly, his gaze shifting between Ryan and Jack. I see you've already met my dad. His tone was casual, but there was an unmistakable edge beneath it. Ryan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The younger salesman, who had been watching with growing discomfort, suddenly became very interested in his clipboard, avoiding eye contact entirely. Silence settled over the showroom, thick and unbearable. A few customers, sensing something big was happening, subtly repositioned themselves to listen in. Ryan finally found his voice. But when he spoke, it was weak. I didn't realize. Lucas tilted his head slightly. Didn't realize what, exactly? Ryan swallowed hard. I didn't know he was. Lucas cut him off. Rich, his tone had turned ice cold. Ryan flinched. Jack stayed silent, watching. Lucas stepped closer, his expression unreadable, his gaze locked onto Ryan like he was dissecting him piece by piece. So let me get this straight, he said slowly, as if working through the thought in real time. You saw a man walk in here wearing work clothes, and instead of treating him like a paying customer, you decided he didn't belong? Ryan opened his mouth, then shut it just as quickly. The smooth, confident showroom manager was gone. The carefully curated arrogance had crumbled in an instant. Lucas let the silence stretch, watching him squirm. Then, he turned to his father. Did he even let you see the car? Jack shook his head. Didn't get that far. Lucas exhaled sharply, turning back to Ryan with something close to disgust in his eyes. That's interesting, he mused, because I was planning on buying 3 cars today, cash. A soft gasp came from somewhere in the background. Even the other employees who had been pretending not to notice visibly stiffened. Ryan's face drained of color. Lucas adjusted his cuff, his eyes never leaving Ryan's. But now, I think I'll take my business somewhere else. Ryan physically jolted, like someone had just kicked the back of his knees. Wait, Mr. Dawson, Lucas held up a hand, stopping him cold. No, you had your chance. Ryan looked around as if searching for someone to bail him out. But the younger salesman, he was suddenly very interested in a price tag. And the rest of the staff, they knew better than to get involved. Jack smirked slightly, adjusting his cap. Guess we'll get those cars somewhere else, huh? Lucas turned to his father. Yeah, somewhere that actually deserves our money. Without another glance, the two of them headed for the door. But Ryan wasn't done yet. His breath hitched as Jack and Lucas walked toward the exit. His mind raced. He had to fix this, fast. Wait. he blurted, stepping forward. "Mr. Dawson, please, let's talk about this." The smug arrogance was gone. Now his voice dripped with desperation. Lucas didn't even slow down. Jack, however, paused just before reaching the exit. He turned slightly, lifting an eyebrow. "Talk about what, exactly?" Ryan hurried to close the gap, forcing an awkward, ingratiating smile. "This was a misunderstanding," he said, his voice suddenly coated in artificial warmth. "I had no idea you were family." Lucas scoffed, shaking his head. "Family?" This time, he turned fully, arms crossing over his chest. "So if he wasn't my father, you'd still be throwing him out?" Ryan froze. Lucas let the silence stretch, watching him squirm. "See, that's the problem," Lucas continued, stepping closer. "You don't treat people with respect, you treat money with respect. And if you don't see money on someone, you act like they don't matter." A hush fell over the showroom. Ryan's face turned red, his fingers twitching at his sides. "That's not what I meant." Lucas wasn't interested in excuses. "So tell me, Ryan, how long have you been doing this? How many people have you turned away just because they didn't look rich enough?" Ryan opened his mouth, then shut it. The air in the showroom thickened. Employees had stopped pretending to work. Customers stood still, some acting like they were scrolling through their phones, but everyone was listening. Jack watched Ryan carefully, his gaze steady. He had seen this type before, the self-proclaimed gatekeeper, the kind of man who decided who was worthy and who wasn't. And today, he had made the wrong decision. Jack shook his head. "You know," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I've been in places like this before. Walked into restaurants, hotels, dealerships. I've seen that same look you gave me 100 times." He let the words sink in before adding, "It's funny, though, the same people who turn their noses up at me always change their tune once they realize what's in my bank account." Ryan swallowed hard, a bead of sweat gathering at his temple. Lucas stepped even closer, lowering his voice just enough to make the words sting. "Here's what's going to happen, Ryan," he said. "You're going to watch us walk out that door. And you're going to remember this moment the next time you judge someone by their clothes instead of their character." Ryan's eyes flicked toward Jack, desperation creeping in. "Sir, please, But Jack had already turned away. And just like that, the biggest sale of Ryan's career walked right out the door. But the consequences, they were just getting started. The heavy glass door swung shut behind Jack and Lucas, leaving behind a silence so thick it might as well have been concrete. Inside the showroom, Ryan stood frozen, his face twisted in an awkward half-smile, half-grimace, like his brain hadn't caught up to what had just happened. The younger salesman, who had been watching everything unfold with barely concealed discomfort, finally exhaled and muttered under his breath, "Wow." A few other employees exchanged glances. They had seen Ryan act this way before, maybe not this blatantly, but the arrogance, the subtle exclusions, the way he catered to certain customers while dismissing others. It wasn't new, but this time, everyone saw it. And this time, it was going to cost him. This time, he had embarrassed himself publicly. And worse, he had just lost the kind of sale that could have earned them all serious commissions. A woman, who had been eyeing a sleek red convertible, turned to her husband and whispered, "Did that just happen?" The man, still staring at the exit, shook his head. "Yeah. And I don't think I want to buy from here anymore." Ryan finally snapped out of it, his head whipped toward the younger salesman. "Why didn't you say something?" He hissed, like this was somehow someone else's fault. The younger man blinked. "What was I supposed to do? Tell you not to be a jerk?" Ryan's jaw clenched. He turned toward the front desk, reaching for his phone. He had to fix this. He'd call Lucas Dawson's office, apologize, offer a discount, something. But before he could even unlock the screen, the dealership's regional manager, Mr. Langford, walked in, and from the look on his face, he had seen everything. Ryan stiffened, his stomach twisting into knots. "Sir, Langford held up a hand. "Save it," he said. "My office, now." Ryan's stomach plummeted as Langford turned and walked toward his office. Every single pair of eyes in the showroom stayed locked on Ryan. The customers, the salespeople. Even the receptionist had stopped typing. Ryan swallowed hard. And just like that, everything he thought he controlled had slipped right through his fingers. Ryan had been in this industry long enough to know. He wasn't walking out of that office with his job. But what about Jack and Lucas? Their day wasn't over yet. Outside, Jack and Lucas stepped into the afternoon sun, the tension from inside the showroom rolling off their shoulders like dust shaken from old boots. Lucas pulled out his keys, unlocking the doors to his sleek black SUV. He paused, glancing at his father. "You all right?" Jack let out a slow breath, then smirked. "You know, I've been disrespected before," he said. But watching that man's face when he realized who I was, that was something else. Lucas chuckled, shaking his head. "You handled that better than I would have." Jack tilted his head. "Oh, I don't know. You did pretty well putting him in his place." He slid into the passenger seat, adjusting his cap. "I'm guessing he won't be working there much longer." Lucas started the engine, the soft hum filling the space between them. "That's not really the point, though," he said. "Firing one guy doesn't fix the problem. There's 100 more just like him, thinking they can size people up based on their clothes, their accent, their skin." Jack nodded slowly, rubbing his palms together. Lucas sighed, gripping the wheel a little tighter. "Yeah, but guys like that, they always expose themselves. Life has a funny way of humbling men who think they're above everyone else." He pulled out of the parking lot, the neon lights of the showroom fading behind them. "Still, I hated seeing you treated like that." Jack glanced at his son, his expression unreadable. "Kid, I've been treated like that long before you were even born." Lucas exhaled sharply. He hated that. Hated how normal it was for his father. For a while, they drove in silence, the city lights flashing past like distant memories. Then, Jack spoke again. "You know what the best part of today was?" Lucas raised an eyebrow. "What?" Jack smirked, watching him beg. A laugh burst from Lucas before he could stop it. "All right, I'll admit, that was pretty satisfying." Jack chuckled too, shaking his head. But then his voice softened, turning serious. "You handled it the right way. You let him dig his own grave, then buried him with his own words. No shouting, no losing your cool, just the truth hitting harder than anything else ever could." Lucas let the words sink in. After a moment, Jack added, "That's how you teach people a real lesson, not with arguments or anger, but by making them face the weight of their own mistakes." Lucas thought about that as the highway stretched ahead. "So where to now?" Jack grinned, leaning back in his seat. "Someplace where the salesmen actually know how to do their jobs." Lucas smirked. "You got it, old man." As their car disappeared into the night, the luxury dealership shrank in the rearview mirror, just another place that lost more than just a sale that day. Because respect, that's something money can't buy. Have you ever been judged by your appearance before people even knew who you were? Or watched someone else be dismissed just because they didn't look the part? It happens more often than we realize. And the only way to change it, call it out when we see it. Treat people with respect, not for what they have, but for who they are. If this story made you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let's keep the conversation going, because at the end of the day, character will always matter more than status.